NASA is going all in on the moon this year. Yesterday, SpaceX successfully launched another moon lander. With that, 3 robot landers are on their way to the moon, with Blue Ghost leading the charge. How are those missions progressing? In today's episode, we'll follow their exciting journey and dive into what lies ahead. Ghost Rider in the sky, Blue Ghost, has reached the moon. Firefly post today on X. T-4 days until we land on the moon. Blue Ghost will reach her final destination no earlier than 2:34 a.m. CST on March 2nd. Along with that announcement was a sweet close-up footage of the moon. The lander is now orbiting the lunar surface, preparing for its descent. The advantage of taking the scenic route is that Firefly has the opportunity to fine-tune Blue Ghost maneuvers based on real-time flight data. Additionally, the spacecraft can capture stunning footage of the moon, which has been sent back to us for viewing. For example, on February 18th, the spacecraft captured a close-up of the moon's far side, an area unseen from Earth, after the lander transitioned from a high elliptical orbit to a lower one, about 120 kilometers above the surface. In addition to flyby footage showcasing the moon's rugged terrain, marked by impact craters, the spacecraft also snapped breathtaking images of the lunar South Pole. In one of the latest footage captured by the lander, we can see the Earth rising and setting behind the moon, offering a stunning celestial display. Joseph Marlin, Deputy Chief Engineer for Blue Ghost, is fascinated by the beauty of the moon. Quote, "The latest moon footage captured by Firefly's Blue Ghost lunar lander is completely surreal. Of course, we had an idea of how the imagery would look, but seeing the real-life footage of the moon's craters and boulders from our very own spacecraft is such an inspiration, and really hits home how close we are to our final destination after all the hard work we've put into this mission." While in lunar orbit, Blue Ghost achieved an interesting milestone. One of its payloads successfully acquired and tracked Global Navigation Satellite System, GNSS, signals for the first time ever in lunar orbit, setting a new record. This groundbreaking feat was accomplished at an impressive distance of 246,000 miles. Now, why does this matter? GNSS is a satellite navigation system that utilizes satellites to provide autonomous geolocation with global coverage. The term GPS may be more familiar to you. It is also a global navigation satellite system. Today, GNSS constellations enable crucial services such as navigation, banking, power grid synchronization, cellular networks, and telecommunications. So the same thing that gives you directions on Earth, now its signal has been picked up on the moon. This record was achieved thanks to the Lunar GNSS Receiver Experiment, or LUGRI. It is a collaborative NASA-Italian Space Agency payload on the Firefly Blue Ghost Mission 1, designed to demonstrate GNSS-based positioning, navigation, and timing on the moon. It will receive and track signals from the GPS and Galileo satellite constellations during the Earth-to-Moon transit and throughout an entire lunar day on the moon's surface. The LUGRI payload features a robust, low-mass, and power-efficient design, enabling it to endure the harsh cislunar and lunar surface environments while fitting seamlessly on the lander. It consists of 4 key components: a high-gain antenna optimized for GNSS L1E1 and L5E, 5A bands, with an integrated filtering stage, a front-end assembly with a low-noise amplifier, 2 GNSS receivers in a dual cold redundant configuration, managed by a supervisory board, and coaxial RF cable harnesses connecting all the components. The successful capture of GNSS signals by this device proves that GNSS constellations can be used for navigation during transit to, around, and potentially on the moon. It also highlights the power of combining multiple GNSS constellations, such as GPS and Galileo, for enhanced navigation. Just imagine a future where, on the moon, We can simply turn on the GPS on our phones to navigate the lunar surface, just as we do here on Earth. After landing on the lunar surface, LUGREE will operate for 14 days, aiming to set another milestone, the first ever reception of GNSS signals on the Moon. Not just LUGREE, but other payloads on Blue Ghost seem to be in good condition as well. According to Firefly, all 10 NASA payloads remain healthy as Blue Ghost approaches its final destination and continues to support science operations along the way. The Lexi telescope, developed by NASA, Boston University, and Johns Hopkins University, has been operating several hours each day, conducting checkouts and initial commissioning in preparation for capturing images from the lunar surface. So it seems like all that's left to do is land this lander on the Moon. First, Blue Ghost will execute a 19-second descent orbit insertion at the 100-kilometer paraloon to begin its descent. During the final hour, the lander will use vision-based terrain relative navigation and hazard avoidance to assess its position and detect craters, slopes, and rocks. It will then select a safe, hazard-free target within the landing zone. Blue Ghost's RCS thrusters will pulse as needed throughout the descent, ensuring a smooth and controlled landing. The Blue Ghost thruster system, designed and built in-house, features 8 Reaction Control System RCS thrusters, named Spectre. These thrusters generate a total of 1,600 newtons of thrust, maintaining orientation during maneuvers, and adjusting the throttle as needed for a smooth, soft landing. Blue Ghost is scheduled to touch down in Mare Crisium on March 2nd, where it will operate its payloads for a full lunar day, approximately 14 Earth days. On March 14th, Firefly plans to capture high-definition imagery of a total eclipse as Earth obscures the Sun above the Moon's horizon. Then, on March 16th, Blue Ghost will record the lunar sunset, gathering data on how solar forces cause lunar dust to levitate and create the iconic lunar horizon glow, a phenomenon first observed by Eugene Cernan during Apollo 17. After sunset, Blue Ghost will continue its mission, operating for several hours into the lunar night. This mission is part of NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services initiative. It is a NASA program that hires companies to send small robotic landers and rovers to the Moon. Just as NASA previously contracted with SpaceX to build rockets and spacecraft to carry cargo to the International Space Station, the government agency is paying several American companies to deliver science and technology to the lunar surface. Another lunar lander just launched yesterday as part of the CLPS program is the Intuitive Machines Nova-C lander, named Athena. It is a 14-foot hexagonal cylinder on 6 landing legs that will shuttle several NASA and commercial payloads to the lunar surface to test exploration vehicles and the first communications network on the Moon, drill and analyze samples of lunar soil, and map precious resources like water ice. Since it's a metal LOX-propelled lander, the spacecraft will follow a fast, direct trajectory to the Moon. This approach is essential to prevent the cryogenic fuel from boiling off. As a result, it will reach the Moon relatively quickly, just a few days after Blue Ghost, despite launching a month later. Athena is lifted off from Kennedy Space Center, atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 shortly after sunset yesterday evening, embarking on a 10-day mission to the Mons Mouton Plateau near the lunar South Pole. For this mission, the company not only updated its lander design but also expanded its focus beyond lunar landers. One of the payloads aboard IM-2, the Micro-Nova Hopper, is a 29-inch, 77-pound rocket-propelled drone crafted to explore regions that ground rovers can't access. Dubbed the Hopper, in honor of computer science pioneer Grace Hopper, this innovative drone will measure surface temperatures and assess water distribution using instruments from Hungary and Germany. Though built for a 15-mile range, it will perform 5 shorter parabolic hops and level flights, reaching difficult areas, including a crater that has never been exposed to sunlight. At the landing site, NASA's Polar Resources Ice Mining Experiment 1, Prime 1, will deploy a meter-long drill and a mass spectrometer to search for and analyze subsurface resources that could support future human exploration. The experiment will also measure forces and temperature. Additionally, Blue Origin's Honeybee Robotics will operate the regolith and ice drill for exploring new terrain, Trident, which will drill 3 feet into the surface. The drill will bring regolith samples to the surface, where the spectrometer will analyze the composition of volatile gases released from the material. The lander also carries a bunch of other payloads like a laser retroreflector array from NASA, a lunar surface communications system from Nokia Bell Labs, and a Japanese rover called Yaoki. Believe it or not, the Japanese lander accompanying the Blue Ghost, the Ispace's Resilience lander, also part of the commercial lunar payload services. Although traveling on a much slower route than the Blue Ghost, this lander has recently achieved certain successes. On February 15, 2025, the company announced that its Resilience lunar lander successfully completed a flyby of the Moon, passing within approximately 8,400 kilometers of the lunar surface. This marks a historic first for a Japanese private commercial lunar lander. Resilience is now on a trajectory toward deep space, set to perform orbital maneuvers that will return it to the Moon in preparation for lunar orbit insertion. While the exact date and time of the insertion maneuver are yet to be determined, it is expected to occur in early May. This mission is critically important for Ispace, following the failure of its first lunar landing attempt in April 2023. That mission ended in the crash of its lunar lander due to a malfunction in the altitude recognition system, which incorrectly interpreted the spacecraft's position above the Moon's surface. A successful landing this time would mark a major milestone for Japan's growing private space sector. If the mission succeeds, Ispace will become the first private company from Asia to successfully land on the lunar surface. Ispace's CEO, Takeshi Hakamada, said during a news conference, "This will be a new challenge for us." As a company that has experienced the frustration of failure, Ispace understands the importance of learning from it and trying again. We aim to achieve a successful moon landing and deliver excitement to the world. The Resilience lunar lander is designed to deliver a micro-rover named Tenacious, developed by Ispace's European subsidiary, to the Moon's Sea of Frost, slightly farther west than in the previous attempt. Tenacious, measuring 54 centimeters in length, will collect lunar regolith, soil, which the company plans to sell to NASA. In addition to the rover, Resilience will carry a diverse range of payloads, showcasing global collaboration and innovation in lunar exploration. Among these are a lunar water electrolysis device from Takasago Thermal Engineering and a self-contained module from Euglena, designed for experiments in lunar food production. And just for extra, Resilience is also carrying the Memory Disk, a collaborative project with UNESCO and the U.S. innovation platform Barrel Hand. This disk contains 275 of the world's languages, along with various cultural treasures. NASA is no longer alone in its quest for space exploration. These private landers not only represent the potential for other companies to reach the Moon, but also symbolize the unity of those sharing a common goal: sending humans to worlds we've never seen before. Before we get to how to get Dragon to the Moon, we need to know why we have to do that. It's not that NASA doesn't have its own vehicle to do that. They do. In fact, it could be considered a pretty decent one. The Space Launch System is one of the most powerful rockets NASA has ever made, and the Orion spacecraft, although not flawless, has proven its potential to carry out its lunar mission in Artemis I. However, the biggest problem these systems are facing is they are bleeding, not just time, but money. Lots of them. The development of the Space Launch System, SLS, with Boeing as the primary contractor, cost $23.8 billion from its inception in 2011 to the successful completion of its first Artemis test flight in late 2022. And since the SLS is a non-reusable rocket, each time it launches, well, there goes $2 billion. The project's high cost is so bad that, at one point, Boeing notified its SLS employees that the company was preparing to cut up to 400 jobs from the program, due to revisions to the Artemis program and cost expectations. Following daily discussions with NASA, the company was able to retain half of the affected jobs. We are in a very bad situation, so a more economical solution must be proposed immediately. One possible approach is to cancel the whole thing and use SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft and Falcon launch system instead. Now, the idea of using the Crew Dragon spacecraft instead of Orion is not new, at least among experts. One of them is Dr. Zubrin, who has come up with a plan to use SpaceX's Crew Dragon for the Artemis mission. If you are familiar with Mars Society, then you have definitely heard this name. Robert Zubrin is the president of Pioneer Astronautics, an aerospace research and development company based in Lakewood, Colorado. He is also the founder and president of the Mars Society, a global organization committed to advancing the exploration and settlement of Mars through both public and private initiatives. Previously, Zubrin served as a staff engineer at Lockheed Martin Astronautics in Denver. He holds a master's degree in aeronautics and a PhD in nuclear engineering from the University of Washington. With a resume like that, when he comes up with a bold plan of using Crew Dragon as an alternative for Orion, the guy knows what's he talking about. At the time, the Gray Dragon plan, which Zubrin referred to as the color of the moon, could get people to the moon as soon as 2024. Here is how the plan goes. To get the Gray Dragon to the moon, we'll need a combination of two launch systems, the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy, and of course the Dragon spacecraft. The reason is that the Falcon 9 doesn't have enough thrust to take Dragon to the moon, and the Falcon Heavy itself isn't crew-rated yet. First, Dragon will be launched into low Earth orbit on a Falcon 9 rocket. This is the altitude at which most artificial objects in outer space are located, and it is also where the Dragon spacecraft often performs its missions. In LEO, the crew will perform systems checks on Dragon, while a Falcon Heavy will be launched into space as well. After stage separation, the Falcon Heavy's lower stage will return to Earth, while the upper stage will stay in LEO to rendezvous with the Dragon spacecraft. Because it does not carry any payload, this upper stage would still contain plenty of propellants. According to Dr. Zubrin, this is enough for the upper stage to bring the Dragon spacecraft to send the Dragon on translunar injection, TLI, and potentially lunar orbit capture, LOC, and trans-Earth injection, TEI, as well. Zubrin offers two options for his plan. The first option involves launching a Falcon Heavy without a payload, placing a 10-ton dry stage and 65 tons of propellant into low Earth orbit. After performing a rendezvous and docking with the Gray Dragon, the combined vehicle has a dry mass of 19.5 tons, with 65 tons of propellant. With the Falcon Heavy's exhaust velocity of 3.41 kilometers per second, this results in a total delta-V capability of 5.0 kilometers per second. After using 3.1 kilometers per second for translunar injection, 1.9 kilometers per second remains, which is sufficient for two DV maneuvers of 0.95 kilometers per second each, one for lunar orbit capture and another for trans-Earth injection, allowing the spacecraft to achieve a lowish lunar orbit and return to Earth. The second option requires the help of a small propulsion stage, or SPS. There was something like that in the original Artemis plan. They called it the Space Launch System Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage. Basically, the task of these systems is to provide in-space propulsion after the solid rocket boosters and core stage are jettisoned. Okay, back to the plan. The SPS consists of 7.9 tons of LOX/CH4 propellant and 1.5 tons of dry mass, bringing its total mass to 9.4 tons. When combined with the Dragon spacecraft, the total mass increases to 18.9 tons. With a mass ratio of 1.717, the SPS provides a total delta-V capability of 2.0 kilometers per second, enabling lunar orbit capture and trans-Earth injection for both outbound and return trips from low lunar orbit. The Falcon Heavy upper stage reaches low Earth orbit with a 10-ton dry mass, 9.4 tons of SPS mass, and 55.6 tons of propellant. After rendezvousing and docking with the Dragon spacecraft, the combined mass of the assembled spacecraft will be 84.5 tons, with 55.6 tons of propellant in the Falcon Heavy upper stage, available for translunar injection. This plan was written by Dr. Zubrin in the form of a memo and sent to NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine and Scott Pace, Executive Secretary of the National Space Council, on June 30, 2020. Zubrin calls it the Artemis VIII mission, named after Apollo 8, the first human spaceflight to reach the Moon. Although this seems like a well-thought-out plan, one thing to note is that in this plan, the Dragon spacecraft is designed for deep space missions, while the current Crew Dragon is a spacecraft optimized for low Earth orbit. So how can SpaceX make the Dragon spacecraft fit to do deep space missions? Well, turns out they don't have to do much. If you remember, before Starship, it was a variant of the Dragon spacecraft that they intended to send to Mars. SpaceX called it the Red Dragon project. This might be the key to upgrading Dragon for the Moon mission. Developed between 2011 and 2017, it proposed using an uncrewed, modified SpaceX Dragon 2 for cost-effective Mars lander missions, launched aboard Falcon Heavy rockets. The primary goal of the initial Red Dragon mission was to test technologies and techniques for entering the Martian atmosphere with equipment that could be used by a human crew in the future. These Mars missions were intended as technology demonstrators for the larger SpaceX Mars colonization plan, which was unveiled in September 2016. Originally conceived in 2016-2011 as a potential NASA Discovery mission for launch as early as 2022, the program evolved after it did not receive funding during the 2013 to 2015 Discovery Mission Program cycle. However, in July 2017, Elon Musk revealed that development would be halted, with resources redirected to the Starship program instead. One of the Red Dragon's advanced technologies that the current Crew Dragon spacecraft still inherits is its robust heat shield. In January 2006, NASA's Stardust capsule, equipped with a standard Pika heat shield, set the record for the fastest re-entry speed of a spacecraft into Earth's atmosphere, reaching 12.9 kilometers per second. The Dragon spacecraft utilizes Pika X, an enhanced version of the original Pika heat shield, which has been tested and proven to exceed the performance capabilities of the heat shield used by Stardust. The heat shield isn't the only thing that stands out about Red Dragon. In the Red Dragon study, the spacecraft was designed to make a direct entry into Mars' atmosphere, descending to the surface without a parachute system. Instead, it would rely on retro-propulsion for a precision landing, with Super Draco rocket engines providing the necessary thrust. The study's findings indicate that, at the upper limits of its capabilities, a Red Dragon spacecraft could land approximately 2 metric tons of useful payload on Mars, twice the mass of any previous payload ever landed on the Red Planet. The study group concluded that a minimally modified Dragon spacecraft could successfully execute an all-propulsive entry, descent, and landing on Mars without violating the laws of physics. In addition, they noted that the Red Dragon capsule offers several times the volume of the Viking-era entry vehicle from the 1970s. The point is, something that can land on Mars can also land on the Moon. Even though they've optimized Dragon for LEO, they could absolutely bring back earlier upgrades to help Crew Dragon get to the Moon. Of course, modifying Dragon will require both time and investment, while existing research will help streamline the process. The modified spacecraft will still need to undergo rigorous testing to ensure it meets safety standards. So, are there any solutions? Actually, there is one. We can use a very important element of the Artemis mission, which is the Starship Human Landing System, or HLS. The idea is to launch the Crew Dragon to LEO and rely on the HLS to do the rest of the work. Here is the plan. The Starship HLS will be launched to low Earth orbit, where it will be refueled by tankers, an essential step as outlined by the Artemis program. Next, the Crew Dragon spacecraft will be sent to LEO, where it will rendezvous with Starship HLS. The crew will transfer from Crew Dragon to Starship HLS, which will then carry them directly to the lunar surface to carry out their mission. Afterward, Starship HLS will lift off from the Moon and return to LEO, where Crew Dragon will be waiting for the crew's return. The crew will then transfer back into Crew Dragon for a safe journey back to Earth, while Starship HLS remains in orbit, ready to be refueled and prepared for the next lunar mission. With this plan, Dragon will only have to operate within its sweet spot. It eliminates any need for any improvements to the spacecraft. Since Dragon has been proven through numerous previous successes, as soon as Starship HLS is ready, we can send humans back to the Moon. So, which plans do you prefer? Let me know in the comment below. As of February 2025, the Orion spacecraft has cost $21.5 billion, or $26.3 billion when adjusted for inflation to 2022. With this money, NASA could acquire multiple Crew Dragon spacecraft and Falcon Heavy rockets for their launches. Still, it appears NASA has no intention of abandoning its SLS and Orion projects. Now, as fans with no direct influence, all we can do is hope that NASA will justify its decision. And if they decide to use alternative measures, they need to quickly come up with a plan. We must return to the Moon. Over 50 years of waiting is enough. As planned, we're just over a year away from NASA's Artemis II, which is scheduled to take place no earlier than April 2026. As the first crewed mission of the Artemis program, Artemis II will carry 4 astronauts on a venture around the Moon. The 10-day flight will test NASA's foundational human deep space exploration capabilities, the SLS rocket, and the Orion spacecraft for the first time with astronauts. This mission is very important because it will pave the way to land the first woman on the Moon on Artemis III. So how close is NASA to Artemis II? The space agency is actively preparing for this mission, despite rumors that SLS is set to be canceled under Trump's 2.0. That progress includes preparations of the rocket, spacecraft, and ground systems. Recent updates indicate significant progress in the assembly of the Space Launch System for this mission. In late January, Brad McCain, Deputy Program Manager for Ground Operations at ground systems contractor Amentum, said that crews were currently stacking segments of the SLS's twin solid rocket boosters, a process that should be complete in the next 2 to 3 weeks. On February 18th, teams with Exploration Ground Systems, aka EGS, stacked the left-forward assembly of the solid rocket boosters. The forward assemblies are non-fueled sections that house avionics and motors and provide aerodynamics during flight. The integration of this assembly completes the stacking of the left booster. This follows the stack of the right forward segment, the 10th motor segment of the solid rocket boosters. The stacked segments are nearing their final height of 177 feet, or 54 meters tall. Once the vehicle is fully assembled, it will be rolled out to Launch Complex 39B for a tanking test. Charlie Blackwell Thompson, NASA Artemis Launch Director, released that the schedule for that tanking test is a little bit variable, but would be no earlier than the fall. Also, Artemis's team with NASA's EGS program at the agency's Kennedy Space Center in Florida successfully tested the new uninterruptible power supply for Mobile Launcher 1 while it's in Kennedy's Vehicle Assembly Building. This marks the next set of integrated ground systems testing the EGS teams are conducting to prepare for the Artemis II crewed mission. For those who don't know, the Artemis EGS program is located at Kennedy Space Center, the launch site for the SLS rocket and its Orion spacecraft. EGS is also responsible for recovering the spacecraft after it splashes down in the Pacific Ocean. But the majority of its activities are at KSC. It is responsible for integrating SLS, the central core, the solid rocket boosters, the Orion spacecraft, and other components, moving it to the launch pad and sending it into space. As one of the most important components, the heat shield for the Orion spacecraft was installed on June 25, 2023, inside the high bay of the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. With the heat shield issue resolved, Matt Ramsey, Artemis II mission manager at NASA, said the key factors driving the launch date will be work assembling the vehicle. The recent progress toward Artemis II highlights the strong commitment of both NASA and contractors to maintaining NASA's current structure. However, it's not enough to fully eclipse the breaking scandals around this program, especially related to two elements, Orion and SLS. NASA flagship Artemis II mission has faced multiple delays since its inception. Initially planned for November 2024, it was then rescheduled to September 2025, and now to April 2026. This represents a significant delay of 1 year and 5 months from the original timeline. The delays are caused by technical issues including erosion of the heat shield on the Orion capsule, flown on the uncrewed Artemis I mission in 2022. The Orion spacecraft's heat shield experienced unexpected charring during the Artemis I mission due to trapped gas in the avcoat material, leading to cracking. In addition, during Artemis I, engineers used the skip guidance entry technique to return Orion to Earth. The technique, while providing flexibility, resulted in a period of reduced heating rates during re-entry, allowing thermal energy and gases to accumulate within the avcoat. Ground testing hadn't fully replicated these lower heating rate conditions. These issues are very serious, with more than 100 locations on the heat shield where material chipped away unexpectedly, raising high safety concerns. More importantly, NASA found itself stuck in a long period of uncertainty as it worked to determine the root cause of the heat shield failures. This has slowed the Orion spacecraft's heavy-lift SLS rocket stacking at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. In addition to the heat shield, NASA discovered problems with both the side hatch and valves in the life support system of the spacecraft. The side hatch needed to be assessed to ensure it could open under various conditions, while valves are designed to keep the crew alive inside the spacecraft. Although they passed testing for Artemis II, those valves failed during testing for the Artemis III mission due to design flaws. NASA engineers also noted deficiencies in the performance of Orion's batteries, intended for use during emergencies when the spacecraft must separate from the rocket. When mentioning scandals in Artemis, can't help but mention the upgraded mobile launch tower for the moon rocket. And the name being criticized this time is NASA's Exploration Ground Systems program, which made the ground systems needed to support the launch are behind schedule. Even though the ground systems were almost done, there was no extra time built into the schedule to handle any unexpected problems or delays. And of course, according to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, not only Artemis II but the next two Artemis missions also expected delay due to this poor management. This could be one of the reasons leading to the following delay of Artemis II to April 2026. The existing Mobile Launcher 1, ML1, is used for the current version of SLS, Block 1, that launched Artemis I on an uncrewed test flight in 2022 and will be used for Artemis II and Artemis. During the Artemis I launch, ML1 sustained more damage than expected. The EGS program refurbished it and added other elements needed for Artemis II. The extremely high cost per launch of a rocket is also a big matter, at around $2 billion. From its inception in 2011 through the year of its first flight, the Space Launch System rocket program has cost $23.8 billion. The Orion Deep Space Capsule has cost $20.4 billion since the program began in 2006. Related ground infrastructure upgrades cost an additional $5.7 billion since 2012. In total, NASA spent $49.9 billion on these programs between 2006 and their first test launch in 2022. Overall, high costs and delays are the two main reasons why pressure is being put on NASA to change the current Artemis approach. So, the concept of using SpaceX's vehicles as a low-cost alternative option has popped off online. We plan to use SpaceX's Crew Dragon for lunar missions. Crew Dragon has a dry weight of under 10 tons and offers 50% more internal space than the Apollo capsule, which transported 3 astronauts to the Moon, making it a potentially ideal choice. SpaceX's Falcon Heavy rocket will launch Crew Dragon into lunar orbit, where it will dock with a lunar lander that will take the crew to the Moon's surface, while Crew Dragon stays in low lunar orbit. After completing their scientific tasks, the crew will return to the lander, which will then dock again with Crew Dragon for the trip back to Earth. SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft, launched on Falcon 9 rockets, has proven its docking capabilities, especially with the International Space Station. However, this solution has notable disadvantages regarding redesigning Dragon for the deep space mission and redesigning Falcon Heavy to be a human-rated vehicle. Another one is to use Starship as it could serve a dual role, acting both as the launcher to deliver astronauts into lunar orbit and as the lander to carry them to the Moon's surface. The mega rocket has the capability to handle an entire lunar mission independently, from Earth's orbit to the lunar surface and back. It can potentially take over Orion's role by transporting crews from low Earth orbit to the Moon. A Dragon spacecraft could bring the crew to LEO, and Starship would complete the journey to the lunar surface and back. A key aspect of using Starship for lunar missions is its ability to maintain stable propellant levels while in lunar orbit. Refueling in LEO may also be required to maximize cargo capacity. However, Starship is still under development, although it is progressing. Waiting for it to come online may further delay the overall program. Additionally, shifting from the SLS Orion framework to Starship would require a revision of mission strategies and could potentially impact existing contracts and involve complex system accommodations. Starship is a fully reusable super heavy lift launch vehicle under development by SpaceX. It consists of 2 main components: the Super Heavy booster and the Starship spacecraft. The combined vehicle, standing at 398 feet, 121.3 meters, is the largest and heaviest rocket ever constructed, with a launch weight of approximately 11 million pounds, 5 million kilograms, when fully fueled. Starship is designed to transport both crew and cargo to various destinations, including Earth orbit, the Moon, and Mars. It is classified as a super heavy lift launch vehicle, capable of delivering over 50 metric tons to low Earth orbit. The Super Heavy booster is powered by 33 Raptor engines, while the upper stage is powered by 6 Raptor engines. These Raptor engines use liquid methane and liquid oxygen, methalox, as propellant, which is denser than hydrogen and allows for a more compact design. One of the key features of Starship is its full reusability. Both the Super Heavy booster and the Starship spacecraft are designed to be recovered and reused after launch. This reusability aims to significantly reduce the cost of space travel, potentially to as low as $100 to $150 per kilogram to orbit. The primary goal of Starship is to facilitate a multiplanetary existence by making space travel more affordable. SpaceX envisions using Starship to establish a permanent human settlement on Mars. Starship is also intended for lunar missions, with a lunar variant proposed for NASA's Artemis program. Starship's unique capabilities and reusability have the potential to revolutionize space travel. Its large payload capacity and low cost per launch could enable a wide range of new missions, including large-scale satellite deployments, deep space exploration, and the establishment of human settlements on other planets. Now, before stepping inside, let's take a good look at the stunning Dragon capsule. The Crew Dragon has two main parts, the capsule and the trunk. The capsule features a mechanical hatch at the tip of its nose cone, which can either reveal a docking port or a cupola window, depending on the mission. The capsule's exterior is painted white. This is not just an aesthetic choice, but also helps protect the spacecraft. It's called Z93C55, a white coating that was applied to the spacecraft to protect it from the rigors of space. The Dragon spacecraft is outfitted with two distinct types of engines, each designed for specific functions. The Draco thrusters, arranged in small clusters around the capsule, are responsible for precise orbital adjustments. With 16 Draco thrusters in total, each utilizing hypergolic propellant, two chemicals that ignite spontaneously upon contact, they provide fine control for maneuvering in space. In contrast, the Super Draco engines, concealed within the capsule's prominent ridges, deliver far more power. These high-thrust engines, 200 times stronger than the Draco thrusters, are reserved for critical emergency abort scenarios, allowing the capsule to swiftly escape from a malfunctioning rocket booster and ensuring astronaut safety. The trunk, standing 12 feet tall, acts as an essential adapter between the capsule and the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. It houses solar panels for power generation, a heat dissipation radiator to manage temperature, and fins that ensure aerodynamic stability during emergency aborts. Overall, the design of Crew Dragon is sleek and modern, exactly what you think a 21st century spacecraft to look like. The question now is the inside also that stunning? I will give you a little hint, it is. In fact, the interior of the Dragon is the thing that stands out the most about the spacecraft. When compared to Russia's Soyuz, the difference in experience is like flying economy versus business class, except in this case, the business class option is much cheaper. So, what exactly are the differences? When you first walk inside the spacecraft, you will immediately notice how spacious it is. At 16 feet tall and 13 feet wide, the capsule offers a generous 9.3 cubic meters of pressurized, habitable space. The spacecraft comfortably supports a crew of 4, but according to SpaceX, it can accommodate up to 7 crew members. Beneath the seats, there are 3 cargo slots where astronauts can stow their equipment or even some snacks for the ride. The second thing you will notice right away is that there is not much going on inside the Dragon spacecraft. Let's look at the Soyuz again. The control area is mostly dominated by a panel filled with buttons and a joystick. Given the tight quarters, the commander, seated in the middle, even has to use a special pointing stick just to reach the Soyuz's screen. Even when it comes to a recently built spacecraft, Boeing Starliner is still largely manual, with buttons and levers. In contrast, the control panel of SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft has 3 large touchscreens, and that's it. Each screen in Crew Dragon can display up to 10 sets of data, allowing the crew to focus on specific systems as needed. There's an overall systems page, with the ability to drill down into individual pages, at least 25 to 30 in total. These displays provide real-time updates on the spacecraft's status, from Dragon's position in space and potential destinations, to the onboard environment and various system capabilities. To use this control panel, astronauts will be trained at a ground facility before the flight. However, most of the time, they won't need to use those things that they train for. The capsule is an autonomous vehicle designed to assist astronauts, handling most tasks on its own, so the crew has very little to do during the mission. Even if something goes wrong with the spacecraft's automated control systems, it's not yet up to the astronauts on board to step in. SpaceX ground controllers will handle troubleshooting and send commands directly from mission control. If all of those fail, only then will the astronauts step in and manually control the vehicle. To give passengers a true sightseeing experience, Crew Dragon is fitted with 4 windows, allowing them to take in breathtaking views of Earth, the Moon, and the broader solar system from the comfort of their seats. If you're fortunate enough to be on a mission like Polaris Dawn, which doesn't involve traveling to the International Space Station, the IDSS port can be swapped for a 1.2-meter domed plexiglass window, providing stunning panoramic views similar to the ISS cupola. From there, you can lean out and enjoy 360-degree vistas of space and Earth. Space may be harsh and cold, but aboard Crew Dragon, it feels just like home. Thanks to its advanced environmental control and life support system, the spacecraft maintains a comfortable and safe atmosphere for astronauts. During their journey, crew members can adjust the interior temperature to a range of 65 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, ensuring a pleasant environment throughout the mission. With all the amenities I have mentioned so far, surely everyone is wondering what a trip on this ship would be like. Well, let me walk you through the details of a typical Crew Dragon mission. Before the mission begins, you and your crewmate will be given a custom-tailored pressure suit and a fancy 3D printed helmet. This is the advanced SpaceX EVA suit, the same thing that was given to Isaac Mann when he performed a spacewalk in the Polaris Dawn mission. The suit ensures astronauts' safety by delivering breathable air, maintaining a stable temperature, and providing the critical atmospheric pressure needed to protect them from harmful physical effects in the harsh conditions of space. The SpaceX EVA suit is crafted from multiple layers of materials inspired by the Falcon rocket inner stage and Dragon spacecraft trunk. These specially engineered materials provide passive thermal regulation and ensure the suit maintains its structural integrity. SpaceX's principal spacesuit engineer, Eric Krauss, said that the suit is like a suit of armor made of fabric. The helmet features a 3D printed visor, crafted from polycarbonate, coated with copper and indium tin oxide. This design helps reflect sunlight away from the crew, while also bouncing infrared heat back toward them when in deep space. Additionally, the helmet integrates a heads-up display directly into the visor, providing real-time data about the spacesuit's systems. This tech is one of my favorite features. It truly gives you an Iron Man-like experience. Anyway, on launch day, you will ride to the pad on the Tesla Model X SUV. After the ground crew helps you get inside the Dragon capsule, they will secure you into the seat by connecting the boots clipped on your suit to the floor. Your highest-grade carbon fiber and Alcantara cloth seat has a life support line that will be plucked in the port on the thigh of your EVA suit to supply cool nitrogen and oxygen to maintain optimal conditions. During the Falcon 9 booster preparation and testing process, if any problem occurs, the 8 Super Draco engines will immediately launch Dragon vertically away from the Falcon 9. If not, then it is time to launch. The Falcon 9's 9 Merlin engines ignite with a deafening roar, unleashing 1.8 million pounds of thrust. The rocket accelerates swiftly, shattering the sound barrier in under a minute and reaching supersonic speeds. If you've ridden on other spacecraft, you'll notice a difference. Launching on Crew Dragon is noticeably smoother. If you don't have that experience, let's hear from someone who has. Bob Benkin, one of the first passengers of Crew Dragon, shared his experience. Quote, "We were surprised a little bit at how smooth things were off the pad. The space shuttle was a pretty rough ride heading into orbit with the solid rocket boosters. And our expectation was, as we continued with the flight into the second stage, that things would basically get a lot smoother than the space shuttle did. But Dragon was huffing and puffing all the way into orbit, and we were definitely driving or riding a Dragon all the way up. Once the first stage separates, the rocket's upper stage takes control, and Dragon continues its journey upwards, reaching orbital velocity in approximately 9 minutes. About 15 minutes after takeoff, you can take off our helmets and enjoy the zero-gravity environment. You are pretty much safe in this phase, so you can float around watching the Earth from the 4 windows. If you feel like using the toilet, there's one located at the ceiling of the spacecraft. It will not be a pleasant experience, but considering that in the past we were given only a sack to use for toilet purposes, this is as good as we can get. Besides, I don't think you would need to use it anyway. The ISS missions are usually a day long, and traveling in space is somewhat like going on a camping trip, especially in the first 24 hours when your body adjusts. During this time, your digestive system tends to slow down. So don't expect there to be much, if any, pooping aboard Dragon. Exploring space surely is fun, but just as exciting is the next step: returning to Earth. There are 7 potential landing sites, and the SpaceX team at Mission Control will select the optimal one based on weather and safety factors. As the capsule re-enters the atmosphere, the crew prepares for the dangerous phase of the flight: re-entry. The Draco thrusters will fire to orient the capsule correctly and ensure a safe descent. During re-entry, the capsule will reach speeds of up to 28,000 kilometers per hour, creating intense heat from air compression. Dragon's Pica 3 heat shield will absorb and dissipate the heat, keeping you and everything else inside well protected. The atmospheric resistance will slow the Dragon's descent to just 560 kilometers per hour, exerting a force on the crew that's 4 to 5 times stronger than Earth's gravity. Once the fire from re-entry dissipates, the communication system will come back online, and the ground crew will notify the crew to prepare for parachute deployment. First, 2 drogues will deploy to help slow us down, followed by 4 main parachutes, bringing our speed down to a safe 24 kilometers per hour before we splash down. Once you splash down in the water, a SpaceX crew aboard a recovery ship will be waiting for you. They'll hook the capsule up to a crane and lift it onto the deck. After sliding out of the capsule with the assistance of the ground crew, you won't be able to walk immediately due to the sudden shift in gravity. Although it will take some getting used to and practice, you will eventually be able to walk and function normally again, and have a great story to tell your friends. As for the Dragon capsule, it will be taken back for refurbishment and ready to fly again. And there you have it, the reason why Crew Dragon has been the most reliable spacecraft we've had since the Space Shuttle program, and the most dependable vehicle for transporting crew to and from the ISS to date. So what about you, if possible? Would you like to be a SpaceX Dragon crew member one day? Let me know in the comments. On January 1st, 2025, SpaceX posted on X revealing the 5th and final Crew Dragon spacecraft, under development. We've been so familiar with the 4 Dragon fleet for so long that the introduction of the new one has stirred up the community. This 5th Crew Dragon is named C213, which was previously planned to make its maiden flight in late March 2025 to the International Space Station, ISS, on SpaceX Crew 10. However, because NASA believed that C213 would not be ready for its debut launch until late April, the mission was reassigned to Crew Dragon Endurance, allowing the launch date to be moved up to no earlier than March 12th. This allows Crew 9 astronauts, including Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, to fly home on March 19th. Wilmore and Williams flew to the station on Boeing Starliner in June 2024, but Starliner's technical glitches forced them to be stranded in space. After the uncrewed Boeing Starliner spacecraft landed safely on Earth on September 6th, the duo of astronauts remained in the ISS, awaiting Crew 9's rescue mission. Endurance was originally slated to support the private Axiom 4 mission later this spring, but it was then reassigned to Crew 10. This means that C213 will have its maiden launch on Axiom 4. Axiom Mission 4 is a private spaceflight, planning to stay on station for 2 to 3 weeks. It will launch on its Falcon 9 rocket to send the 4th private astronaut mission to the ISS, including Peggy Whitson, commander, Shubhanshu Shukla, pilot, Swawosh Uznansky-Wisniewski, mission specialist, and Tibor Kapu, mission specialist. Prior to Axiom 4, there were 3 Axiom missions hosted by the space company Axiom Space, using SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft for missions to the International Space Station. These missions weren't just sightseeing trips. They were a testament to the Dragon's dependability, carrying researchers, innovators, and dreamers on journeys filled with scientific experiments and outreach activities. Beyond Axiom's endeavors, SpaceX further solidified its commitment to commercial private spaceflight, with missions like Inspiration 4, which sent an all-civilian crew soaring, and Polaris Dawn, pushing the boundaries of human spaceflight capabilities. Both Inspiration 4 and Polaris Dawn were private spaceflights, spearheaded by Jared Isaacman, who is now the new NASA administrator. They are also conducted by Crew Dragon Resilience, serial number C207. Resilience first launched on November 16, 2020, to the ISS on the SpaceX Crew 1 mission. It was the first crewed operational flight of a Crew Dragon craft and the Commercial Crew program. Resilience has a long history of operations, so it's no wonder it's been entrusted with important private missions, most notably the Polaris Dawn, which launched on September 10, 2024. The 5-day Polaris Dawn mission etched its name in the annals of space exploration, with a daring display of firsts. Beyond the mesmerizing spectacle of the first commercial spacewalk and the trial by fire of SpaceX's cutting-edge EVA suit, the mission dared to reach altitudes unseen by human eyes since the twilight of the Apollo era in 1972. The crew aboard Crew Dragon Resilience ventured farther from Earth than any astronaut in half a century, pushing the boundaries of human spaceflight. On September 15, 2024, Resilience returned to Earth, splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico. Just 3 days later, the capsule, bearing the marks of its fiery descent like a marshmallow toasted to perfection, was back at Cape Canaveral aboard the recovery vessel Shannon. One of the maintenance requirements is to strip and reapply the back shell, which is made of an ablative material. According to Jared Isaacman, Polaris's commander, the Resilience will not need much refurbishment before its next flight, showing the great reusability of the vehicle. That was our spaceship, Crew Dragon Resilience. It looks like she could use a bit of a touch-up before the next go. We have so much appreciation for the mission control and recovery team that brought us back safely. One of the most important parts of any spacecraft is the thermal protection system, with the heat shield being the primary component. The heat shield protects spacecraft from the immense destructive power of atmospheric re-entry. An ablative heat shield, which SpaceX uses on Dragon's backshell, is called SPAM, SpaceX Proprietary Ablative Material. It works by heating part of the material itself into gas and burning away, thus moving the heat buildup away from the capsule. By comparison, a thermal soak heat shield, as was used on the Space Shuttle, is designed to absorb the heat and radiate it, without the material burning away. The thickness of the Dragon capsule's heat shield allows it to act partially as a thermal soak, but the outer layer will still ablate, reducing the heat shield thickness. It explains why the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule looks badly burned from re-entry. Additionally, the ablative material is also used to solve problems with Starship's thermal protection system. The biggest weakness of Starship's upper stage is the heat shield. Perhaps we are all familiar with images showing many heat shields falling off and breaking while the rocket performs its mission. To reduce the negative impact of this issue, the engineers put an ablative secondary structure, basically ablative protection behind the tiles, so that if the tiles crack or come loose, it doesn't cook the rocket. Along with SPAM, there is another kind of heat shield on Crew Dragon, namely PICA-X, as the primary heat shield. PICA-X is a SpaceX-developed variant of NASA's original PICA, phenolic-impregnated carbon ablator, heat shield material, which is a lightweight material designed to withstand high temperatures, as part of the heat shield on cargo flights. PICA-X has several improved properties and greater ease of manufacture when compared to the original PICA. As the name, it is also one kind of ablative heat shield. This upgraded design shows superior performance in the test at the Arc Jet Complex at NASA Ames Research Center, Moffett Field, California, where a sample of PICA-X heat shield material was subjected to temperatures of up to 1,850 degrees Celsius, 3,360 degrees Fahrenheit. 1850 degrees Celsius is the projected temperature of Dragon during re-entry, and as SpaceX stated, A few inches of Pica X protects against these temperatures, keeping the interior of the capsule at room temperature. The NASA-originated Pica material holds the record for high-speed re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. However, the SpaceX-developed and manufactured Pica X variants even meet or exceed the performance of the original material. So, how about you? Are you excited about the advanced heat shield technology on the Crew Dragon? If you are, feel free to drop the heart icon in the comment section below. One more interesting tidbit. The Dragon capsule was the first vehicle using a Pica-based shield to enter the Earth's atmosphere from low Earth orbit. For this reason, the Dragon capsule would not need to have as heavy protection as NASA's Stardust capsule, a 385-kilogram robotic space probe launched by NASA on February 7, 1999, which entered the atmosphere at twice the speed and experienced 10 times the heating. This allowed for a lighter overall vehicle. So it's safe to say Pica has a strong operational history. So one might ask why SpaceX improved upon Pica instead of using the Space Shuttle's thermal protection system. One short and simple way to answer that question is to look at the track record of Space Shuttle TPS, which has a tarnished reputation due to the 2003 Columbia disaster, in which 7 astronauts died when the shuttle broke apart during re-entry. The disaster was caused by a piece of foam that detached during liftoff and created a hole in the wing's reinforced carbon-carbon tiles, allowing hot gases to penetrate and destroy the vehicle. While a similar disaster is possible with Pica, it hasn't happened, giving Pica an advantage. It's more appealing to advance a TPS that has a record of success, including the fastest re-entry, and has not caused any loss of life. This likely contributed to the continued development of Pica X and the retirement of the Space Shuttle program. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean Crew Dragon's TPS is perfect from the start. In May 2022, a heat shield for a SpaceX Crew Dragon intended for the Crew 5 mission failed to pass an acceptance test due to a manufacturing defect. The defect was discovered during a test simulating the loads experienced during landing. After that, NASA and SpaceX decided to replace it with another screen. It is worth noting that the message about the replacement of the shield was made by NASA as part of a response to the claims of the Space Explored website about a fuel leak and dangerous wear of the Axiom 1 mission heat shield. The Aerospace Administration has stated that these rumors are not true. SpaceX produces the Crew Dragon spacecraft primarily to transport astronauts to and from the International Space Station. It was developed as part of NASA's Commercial Crew program to hand over space station flights to American companies. The Crew Dragon is capable of carrying both NASA and commercial astronauts to destinations in low Earth orbit, the Moon, and beyond. Crew Dragon is designed to carry up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit. It can transport up to 6,000 kilograms of cargo to the ISS and return 3,000 kilograms to Earth. The spacecraft can autonomously dock with the ISS using GPS, cameras, and imaging sensors. Crew Dragon is used for crew rotation missions to the ISS, with launches planned every 6 months. Besides transporting crew and cargo to the ISS, SpaceX has proposed versions like Dragon XL for Lunar Gateway logistics services. In a blaze of innovation, SpaceX's Dragon has etched its name in the annals of space exploration. Forget the dusty history books. Dragon wasn't just knocking on the ISS's door. It kicked it down as the first private spacecraft to deliver precious cargo to the orbiting laboratory in 2012. But that was just the warm-up. Fast forward to 2020, and Dragon soared to even greater heights, becoming the first private chariot to carry human heroes to the stars. And while other spacecraft splash down and stay down, Dragon fearlessly claws its way back from the inky black, making SpaceX the only private company with the power to bring spacecraft home from low Earth orbit. In the dawn of human space exploration, Boeing wasn't just a company. It was a name whispered with reverence, synonymous with the boundless ambition to reach for the stars. This was their golden era, a time when slide rules and raw ingenuity transformed dreams into metal and fire. Picture the colossal Saturn V rocket, a titan that would hurl humanity toward the moon. Boeing wasn't just building a piece of it. They were crafting the very foundation, the SIC first stage, a monstrous engine belching forth 7.7 million pounds of thrust, a force that defied gravity itself. Before Neil Armstrong took his giant leap, it was Boeing's lunar orbiters, tireless robotic scouts, that meticulously mapped 99% of the lunar surface, their cameras painting a detailed portrait of the alien landscape and guiding NASA to safe landing sites. And who could forget the lunar roving vehicle, the moon buggy that gave astronauts the freedom to explore the lunar plains, extending their reach and our understanding of that distant world. These weren't just projects. They were milestones etched in the fabric of human history, and Boeing stood at the heart of it all, an architect of the space age, its name forever intertwined with humanity's first audacious steps beyond Earth. It's a legacy that even the recent turbulence of the Starliner program can't fully eclipse, a testament to a time when Boeing truly helped to launch the dreams of a generation. Thanks to its legacy at the dawn of space exploration, Boeing easily received the lion's share of funding in NASA's Commercial Crew Program, up to $4.2 billion from NASA, compared to the $2.6 billion contract of its companion, SpaceX. There's evidence, though, suggesting Boeing lobbied for a larger share of funding in this program before the decision was made. So, why could they do it with ease? Is it due to their reputation as a great legacy firm? Unlikely. Rather, it is due to their influence in Washington. Some suggest that Boeing's participation in the Commercial Crew Program was essential to ensure its political viability. Without Boeing's involvement, securing congressional support and funding for the program might have been challenging. Funnily enough, it seems that getting a large portion of the funding is not enough for them. There are claims that Boeing used a lobbying firm to plant an opinion piece critical of SpaceX in U.S. news outlets, with billions of dollars in NASA contracts at stake. With its inherent advantages, Boeing, with its Starliner spacecraft, was expected to surpass SpaceX's Crew Dragon in the space race. For example, sending astronauts to Mars before billionaire Elon Musk's SpaceX, as in the challenging statement of former Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg. Eventually, we're going to go to Mars, and I firmly believe the first person that sets foot on Mars will get there on a Boeing rocket. That saying has then become a stain in Dennis's life. Boeing not only cannot go to Mars, but also its Starliner project has become a disaster in the space industry, contributing significantly to the company's financial crisis. By early February 2025, Boeing's Starliner program had racked up a staggering $2 billion in losses, and counting. Now, keep this in mind. Starliner isn't a commercial cash cow. It's a defense sector project, an area where Boeing has never been financially dominant. So, losing $2 billion on the Starliner project, that's not just a setback. It's a massive red flag for a company already navigating rough financial waters. The numbers keep getting worse. In 2024 alone, Boeing reported a $523 million charge on Starliner. By December 31st, Boeing was already drowning in $398 million in capitalized pre-contract costs and facing $150 million in potential termination liabilities for unauthorized future missions. And the worst part? More losses are on the horizon due to its fixed-price contract with NASA. Translation? Boeing eats the cost of every delay, technical issue, and budget overrun, with no way to recover the losses. Starliner's first crewed mission launched with high hopes in June, but by September, those hopes were shattered when propulsion failures forced NASA to bring it back, without astronauts. Now, in a move that delivers a brutal blow to Boeing's credibility, NASA has ordered a rescue mission using SpaceX's Crew Dragon under Crew 9, with a targeted return no earlier than late March, making the vehicle's chances of competing in the commercial spaceflight market shrink to near zero. The real question now is, how much longer can Boeing sustain this before it becomes a breaking point? In a surprising move, both NASA and Boeing have remained silent on the Starliner's future plan. Will they cancel it? Previously, the company has stated that it is committed to overcoming the issues that have hindered its progress. Boeing's new CEO has announced that they will continue to work on Starliner, and there are ongoing efforts to address the technical problems identified during previous test flights. NASA is also exploring options for future Starliner missions, with a potential crewed flight still on the table for 2025, contingent upon Boeing's ability to resolve the outstanding certification requirements. However, there is skepticism about whether Boeing can meet these timelines, and some industry observers believe that if significant progress isn't made soon, NASA may reconsider its partnership with Boeing for crewed missions. Among that, there is a viable solution to fly a cargo mission on the spacecraft later this year, and another is to proceed with certifying the Starliner spacecraft for operational crewed rotation flights, although last year's crewed test flight has not yet been completed. The problem becomes increasingly difficult as the ISS's retirement date approaches around the 2030s, and SpaceX's fifth Crew Dragon almost comes online, meeting NASA's intention to extend SpaceX's commercial crew contract through the Crew 14 mission. That means the chances of Starliner completing all 6 crewed rotation flights to receive the full contract amount are looking less and less likely. Musk posted on X later 2024, "There is no logical purpose to Starliner given that NASA plans to deorbit space station in roughly 5 years." And I bet you agree with Musk's comment above. Let's show our agreement by dropping "Cancel Boeing's Starliner" in the comments. So, why did Boeing stumble so easily in the first place? Boeing's former CEO, Dave Calhoun, blames fixed-price contracts, particularly within its defense sector. One notable example is the Air Force One program, initiated during the Trump administration. This fixed-price contract has been scrutinized due to various issues, including design flaws, supplier bankruptcies, labor problems, and the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on production. Calhoun admitted that entering into this fixed-price agreement might not have been the best decision, highlighting the financial strain such contracts can impose. Beyond Air Force One, Boeing's defense division has faced billions in losses from other fixed-price contracts, such as the KC-46 tanker and T-7A trainer programs. These contracts have resulted in over $7 billion in cost overruns on the KC-46 alone. But is it true that fixed-price contracts are a financial trap for Boeing? The reality is far more complex. Fixed-price contracts do increase financial risk, as seen with Boeing's Air Force One program and KC-46 Pegasus tanker, where cost overruns and delays led to billions in unexpected losses that Boeing had to absorb. However, Boeing's deeper issues stem from technical failures, mismanagement, and intense competition. The Starliner spacecraft, for example, suffered repeated mission failures due to software bugs and propulsion issues, not because of the contract terms, but because of poor engineering and quality control. Meanwhile, SpaceX's Crew Dragon, developed under the same fixed-price NASA contract, succeeded while Starliner fell years behind schedule. Similarly, Boeing's 737 MAX crisis, which resulted in deadly crashes, lawsuits, and financial losses, had nothing to do with a fixed-price contract, but rather rushed development and ignored safety concerns. At the same time, Boeing has fallen behind competitors like SpaceX and Airbus, both of which have thrived despite working under similar contract constraints. Airbus, for instance, has outperformed Boeing in commercial aircraft sales by focusing on more efficient designs, while Boeing has struggled with delays and trust issues. While fixed-price contracts certainly add pressure, they are not the root cause of Boeing's problems. Its real downfall lies in inefficient execution, engineering failures, and poor strategic decision-making. Elon Musk, CEO of SpaceX, has a different take on what caused Boeing's collapse. Too many non-technical managers at Boeing, he said. Boeing is notorious for a leadership structure that prioritizes business and financial decisions over engineering expertise. Let's break this down with some real-world examples. Historically, Boeing was led by engineers who prioritized technical innovation and safety. But after merging with McDonnell Douglas in 1997, the company shifted towards a more finance-driven approach, emphasizing cost-cutting and shareholder value. This shift is evident in the 737 MAX crisis, where engineers raised concerns about the MCAS system. But leadership pushed for quick certification to compete with Airbus, resulting in 2 deadly crashes and billions in losses. Similarly, with the Starliner program, Boeing's leadership was often too far removed from the technical side of the project, leading to costly delays and failures due to software bugs and other technical issues. In contrast, SpaceX's success stems from its leadership, which is deeply technical, with Elon Musk himself overseeing engineering decisions. SpaceX's focus on rapid problem-solving and engineering innovation has enabled it to succeed where Boeing has struggled, despite facing similar contract constraints. To recover, Boeing would need to return to an engineering-driven culture, where engineers have more influence in decision-making, and innovation takes priority over cost-cutting measures. Musk's criticism highlights the real issue. When non-technical managers dominate decision-making, engineering quality suffers, leading to safety compromises and costly mistakes. Perhaps Boeing has realized this, so last July, they named aerospace veteran Kelly Ortberg as the new CEO. Elon Musk has expressed strong opinions about Boeing's leadership changes, particularly regarding the appointment of Kelly Ortberg as CEO. In December 2024, Musk commented on X, stating, "Boeing is on a much better track with the new CEO. The prior guy had no idea how airplanes or rockets worked. Just zero. Hopefully, with the new role, Kelly Ortberg can turn the tide and save Boeing from the brink of bankruptcy." So how about you? Do you believe in Boeing's new CEO's leadership abilities? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts.